So we're excited to have our last in our series of Majesty of Chassidus. Yehuda Pinchover we've been zocher to meet recently, and we're excited to be speaking tonight on Einayim and Meor on Anivus.
So I'm going to summarize basically what the Einayim is about and what the Meor is about. But first, before I'll bring about a bit about the Toldot. No, it's okay. I'll talk about a bit about Einayim and the Meor. So first I'll start by the Einayim. He was born in 1730, and he was one of the Talmidei Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov himself considered him as a Baal Shem Tov Katan, and he loved him so much that once he said that you're trying to make so much Avot, and in the heaven there's not going to be any place for anyone because you're taking so much heaven. That's what the Baal Shem Tov spoke to him. Now a bit about the Sefer, how much it is considered by the Tzaddikim, is the Sefer of Einayim. Once the Rabbi Akiva Eger went on a cart with the horse, and there was one of the Talmidim of the Einayim was with him, together with him. And the Rabbi Akiva Eger saw him reading a Sefer, and he asked him, "What are you reading?" He said, "The Sefer Einayim." So Rabbi Akiva Eger wanted to lend the Sefer from him, and the Talmid of the Einayim did not want to lend it to him. So he said, "I'll pay you for it, and I'll give it to you back later." He said, "No." Afterwards, each one went to the separate parts, and when the Talmid came to the Chozeh Milublin, the Chozeh Milublin said to him that if he would have given him the Sefer Einayim, there would be another Talmid of the Baal Shem Tov. That's one story. Another story is with the Chida, Zichron Levracha, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, that at the end of his days, as you know, he went from many places. The Chida, he was a traveler. He went to find Torah from one place to another, to learn as much Torah as possible. And one time the Sefer Einayim came into his hand when he was in his older years, and he said, "Meitzer ani ad meod al ilyan ze shelo הייתי באותם המקומות בהם התגוררו תלמידי בעל שם טוב." He regret the fact that he was not with the Baal Shem Tov and the Magmi Mezich and other Talmidim. And he then, and some people say that the Chida said, "אילו היה מכיר ספר זה מקודם, היה יכול לחסוך על ידי כך מחצית מדרשותיו." So you could say half of it, he could have condensed more Yisrael. That's what he said, and he had the tzar that he could not be with them. But the Chida himself was also a shliach shel Shechina, because tzaddikim, in the Zohar it says that every time a tzaddik goes into his way, then the Shechina is with him. That's why you see in the Zohar a lot of times that one tzaddik meets another tzaddik, and straight away they see the Shechina is with you. Why? Because when two tzaddikim or three tzaddikim are together, the Shechina is with them. And another thing I want to tell about the Einayim, that he was an orphan from a young age. He had no father and mother from a young age, and he was raised by his uncle. His uncle's name was, I think, Rabbi Nachman. And despite having a lot of trouble with food, he was cold in the winter. He was struggling a lot. Those days, Aniyut was not like today. People properly struggled. Despite that, he had the time to write his Sefer and to learn Torah day and night, and eventually get the Sefer Einayim. And now I'm going to talk a bit about the Toldot of the Meor. He was also born in 1730, and he was the rabbi of the Balatanya, and he was a rabbi in Russia, in the Russia Levana, and later in his years he went up with 300 students to Eretz Israel. And just a bit about
the Meor.
The Meor
was the main role for the Balatanya.
One of the Maggid Mezich was the main role of the Balatanya, but after the Maggid Mezich was passed away, he was the main. He was Meor. Rabbi Nachman Mendel Mevitesk was the main person, and yeah. So he wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael with Rabbi Nachman Mendel, and Rabbi Nachman Mendel told the Balatanya to stay in Russia to support the communities there. He moved up with 300 people first. He went to Tzfat, then he had problems with Arabs and the Turkish people, and he had to leave to Tver, and he's buried in Tveria, the Pri Haaretz. So if you want to visit his grave. And just a bit about Shevach, what the Baal Tanya said about the Pri Haaretz. Once the Meor met the Baal Tanya, and the Meor asked the Baal Tanya, "Ma kocho shel Pri Haaretz?" So the Baal Tanya said to the Meor that the Pri Haaretz knows all the thoughts of a person. So the Meor said, "Ma bekach, it's not a big deal to know all the thoughts of another person. For us, of course, it's a big deal." So we said to him, the Baal Tanya, "Hoisif ואמר כך, הוא יודע כל מחשבות של בן אדם, גם עכשיו וגם בעבר." So the Meor also was not מתפעל, and he said, "ומה בכך?" Because the Meor was also בעל רוח קודש גדול. And so he went and added that the Baal Tanya said on the Pri Haaretz that whenever he passes a house or a place, he knows all the thoughts in the past, present and future. That was his madriga. So that means if you ever pass through a house where the Pri Haaretz went to, probably he sees you as well. So this is the madriga of the Pri Haaretz, and then the Meor was the spile. And the Meor was also Bar Ruach HaKodesh. There was one psak din that he did al pi Ruach HaKodesh, but for now it's enough introduction for this, so we'll have more time to study. And now basically my point of the study here is the way of life of the tzaddikim, which is considered anava. In Orchot Tzaddikim it says that anava, I think he speaks specifically about Yiras Shamayim, that it's like a string, a wire that holds all the pearls of the necklace. That's the Yiras Shamayim, and another holding all the pearls of a necklace. So first, the Pri Haaretz is a super condensed information. That means it's a summary of all the Chassidut. It's like the Shulchan Aruch of all Chassidut. And Torah, הם עשירים במקום אחד ועניים במקום אחר, so I have to use other sforim to explain the Pri Haaretz and the Meor. And first I'll start by saying one sentence from the Pri Haaretz. Since the subject of this lesson is Yiras Shamayim, I'll say this. He says in Parashat Shemot, ועניין יראת שמיים הוא הדבקות וייחוד גמור אמיתי, כל המידות אליו יתברך, שהוא עניין היראה. So the dveikus is the inyan hayira. When he says this to us, this one sentence, if we don't know what it means, it doesn't mean a lot to us. We need to expand on that. So in order to expand on this one sentence, I'll say what the Meor says on Parashas Miketz. In Parashas Miketz, the Meor says that we have basically seven midot. Ahava, Yira, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. And each midah has a different function. And I'm going to read this now. So Ahava, of course, is when you love another Yid, when you love a Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's the first part of Yiras Shamayim, because this is the first midah of all the midah. So the first part of Yiras Shamayim is to love another, and to love your Yid and not to be judgmental. The second part is the Yirat Shamayim. And soon I'll go later to expand on what the Yirat Shamayim is, because there is three types of Yiras Shamayim. Yiras Chet, Yirat HaTorah, and Yirat HaRomiyut. And it's like the same level of the body. But I will use the Kedushat Levi, what the Kedushat Levi says in Parashas Eikel.
So what was the second Yirat?
Yirat Chet.
That was the first one. Chet, one more.
No, Yirat Onesh is the first one.
Onesh.
Yirat Chet, which is the Yirat Ata, and Yirat HaRomiyut. And the Yirat Chet is the Anava. Here you got some papers to see what from the Kedushat Levi, but first, before we go into the what the Kedushat Levi says, I'll explain to you more about the midot. Netzach is when you don't have the middle of trying to win anything. Instead of trying to win your friends or whatever it is, midat hanitzachon, you want to win the Yetzer Hora. Eze hagibor hakובש את יצרו. Tiferet is that you shouldn't praise yourself when you are rich or when you are strong or when you are smart. So, because when you do this, you are pogem בתפארת ישראל, בתפארת של הקדוש ברוך הוא. So this is considered Tiferet Ra. And the Tiferet that you should have, it is you should praise another Yid, you should praise הקדוש ברוך הוא, and להסתכל על המעלות שבכל אחד. And this is one. This is and the Yesod is when you unite everyone. When you do Shlom Bayit, when you do Shlom Miklal Yisrael, this is Midat HaYesod, Shezeh Midat HaShalom. Ve'ira is simply when you Mekabel Ol Malchus Shomayim. Since I'm mentioning now Ol Malchus Shomayim, it's obvious that we do it at least 2 times a day. Sometimes we do it more if you say the Kriyat Shema after before the Korbanot. You can do it more times. And this is something which I was always thinking of, that they say when somebody says Kriyat Shomayim, you should be Mechaven Abba Mitot Beis Din. And when we logically to be Mekabel Abba Mitot Beis Din, it sounds like something bad. We're supposed to live, not die. So I saw that
Midot Beitin.
Abba Mitot Beis Din. When somebody
Abba
says
Mitzvahs.
Abba Mitot Beis Din.
Mitzvahs.
So I saw in Chesed Avraham, the son of the Maggid Mezrich, and in a few other Sifrei Chassidus, that when they mean Abba Mitot Beis Din, they are talking about vanishing Midot Haraot. So the Abba Mitot Beis Din that you are Mechaven Kriyat Shema is להעביר את כל המידות הרעות. You understand what I'm saying? Because I'm saying it in Hebrew, not in English, that's why. You understand a bit Hebrew? Okay, so להעביר את המידות הרעות זה עיקר של קבלת עול מלכות שמיים. And not the good part. Also the Baal Tanya not in in the Tanya, yeah, Likutei Amarim, פרק ל"ד, says that we should be nothing in terms of our body, but praise ourselves in terms of our neshama, חלק אלוקים ממעל. So anything which has to do with אהבות נפולות ויראות נפולות, that should be מאוס בעינינו. So מצד גופנו אנחנו שום דבר, אבל מצד נשמתנו אנחנו הכל. You should praise yourself, you should not put yourself down in that sense. So it's true that in some sense you should think of yourself as nothing, but in other sense you should think of yourself as a king. Kol bnei Yisrael melochim. But you need to make a right distinction. Bnei melochim is from your neshama part, and the eved is from your bodily parts, because our bodies is just a levush. So this is one part. And keneged zeh, of course, like you have sheva midot, and he's talking about the sheva parot tovot and sheva parot raot in Parashas Miketz, and he's talking about sheva midot raot, and zeh keneged zeh. And you can only come to Yiras Shomayim when you unite all those sheva midot. And now that I explained this, if I go back to what the Pri Haaretz says in Parashas Shemot, it's going to make a bit more sense. And I'll read it again. ועניין יראת שמיים הוא הדבקות וייחוד גמור אמיתי כל המידות יתברך. So what does it mean using all לימודות for Hashem יתברך? That means that everything you do is בלתי להשם לבד, only for Hashem יתברך. So then you can ask a question, if everything we do is for Hashem יתברך, why do we have every day in 18 רפואינו Hashem, which is for ourselves, and ברוך חולנו is also for ourselves, everything is for ourselves. So for this I will bring the Nefesh HaChaim, and also the Baal Chesed L'Avraham. I'll read it from inside. If you want to read it, I'll give you time. I'll give you to read it. In Masechet Avot, the Baal Chesed L'Avraham says, "Al tiyu ka'avadim המשבשים את הרב על מנת לקבל פרס." And he says here, יש העובד שכל עבודתו ועסקו בתורה ובתפילה ובמצוות הוא על דרך פשט הדברים. That when you say רפאנו, it's פשט. והם נקראים העובדים על מנת לקבל פרס. כי מי שלא למד דרך סוד כלל, דרך הסוד is the Rashbi and the Arizal. אם היותו שלם בעבודת קונו מאהבה בלא שום פנייה, even if you do your mitzvahs without שום פנייה, and just before I continue to explain, בלא שום פנייה means, let's say, you are a father, yes? And when you do something for your child, you don't do it because you want to gain out anything from him. You simply do it because you love him and you want for his own benefit. So you don't have any pniya. The same thing when you do a mitzvah for another Yid, you help the Kehillah, all the other mitzvahs you do a lot of tzedakah, you shouldn't see it as you doing something, but of course first Hashem lends you the strength, and you shouldn't have any pniya, but the mitzvah is your own schar. Just like when you help your children, this is your schar by itself. So even if you get to such a high madriga, which this madriga itself is very rare, the Baal Chesed Avraham says, אפילו שעובד מאהבה בלא שום פנייה, like I said before, כלל, אלא מהחמת גדולת תרומתו הגדול, ואין פנייתו לשום שכר, כלל, אלא כוונתו שלמה בתכלית השלמות, לעולם לעולם יקרא עובד על מנס לקבל פרס. Even if you get to such a high מדרגה, the בעל חסד Avraham Azulai says you're also על מנס לקבל פרס. Why? Because when you say refrain, you talk about yourself. But it's not a bad thing to pray for yourself. I'll come to it in a second. דהיינו, שבהיותו מתפלל לקונו, או נוטל לבוא, מקריב זבחו והקודש, כל כוונתו הוא כפי הדברים היוצאים מפיו. If you do the כבשי עצרת, או the לולב, לעצור תללים רעים ורוח רעות, like it says in מסכת סוכות. וכן, רפואינו והשם ונרוך וכל כיוצא, הרי כל כוונתו לתועלת עצמו. להשפיע רב טוב, וכל מה שיוסף ויתאמץ כוונתו בתפילתו, יוסף להיות תובע פרס רב מרבו. הברכה והרפואה והחיים והשלום, כמובן זכרוננו לברכה, וכן בכוונת בנינו הלולב. So he says, the עיקר הכוונה should be to the Shekhinah. Because when the Shekhinah is tsar, it says, kalani miroishi, kalani mizroi, ובכל צורות צמלות צור. And the real part of us which suffers from the Chatoim is it's not our body, it's our neshama. And our neshama is part of the Shekhinah. So if you take all Klal Yisrael, all the neshamas of Klal Yisrael, combine them to one body, this is the Shekhinah. Because this is the Shekhinah created Klal Yisrael, and this is the source of the Shekhinah, which is the Shamot. So if you pray for the Shekhinah, רפואינו זה מידת התפארת, you pray for this, לאינסוף שנמצא בתוך התפארת, לא לספירה עצמה, then you pray for the Shekhinah שלא יצא לקדוש ברוך הוא, שהקדוש ברוך הוא is going to be happy with us, then this is the עיקר התפילה. And then you are עובד השם לא על מנס לקבל פרס. So this sefer was written about almost 500 years ago from the בעל חסד לאברהם, and the same exact thing which I said now, the Nefesh HaChaim says, the Nefesh HaChaim says in Perek Yud Bet, Shar Bet Perek Yud Bet, he says this, ולכן שכל תכלית תפילת האדם לפניו יתברך שמו, להסיר מאליו צרו, הוא רק על צר שלמעלה, המשתתף עמו בצרו. And he's the Chazal saying, basically the Nefesh HaChaim, the Chesed L'Avraham, and all the tzaddikim, the Be'er Mayim Chaim, they say that the pains that we feel it's like a radiation from the heavens to us. And there is something in the Zohar in Parashat Tetzaveh, Daf Kuf Pei Dalet. He says that everything that you do is like a mirror for heaven. So if you act b'midat hachesed, you're omer kenegdecha mit'orer midat hachesed. If you do a din, you judge another person, straight away you are judged in the same way from the heavens. And this is exact same thing that when you pray for the tsar, for your soul, and the Shekhinah, אז ושב ומתחרב ומת עליו ולא שגרם על ידו הצער של מעלה, אז הייסורים מסתלקים עיניו. And this is the emes way to daven. The same thing the Noam Elimelech says, that the Iker to daven, even though when you see another Yid is in pain, you want to daven for him, the Noam Elimelech says, I don't remember the exact parsha, but I know he says this in a few places in his Sefer, that first you should daven on Tzar HaShekhinah, and then b'meile the Yid who is suffering is going to heal, because the Shekhinah is part of us. And to explain why it is because this whole world, the whole universe is the Shekhinah, it's a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And when there is a chesaron, when somebody can't speak or doesn't have a hand or is suffering, this chesaron is like you're saying Hashem is not able to make this person healthy. So it's like the chesaron is in a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and you are davening for Kvod Hashem Yitbarach.
What do you mean when you said daven for the Shekhinah?
Davening for the Shekhinah is the Tzar HaShekhinah. Just like a father doesn't want to see his children in Tzar, the same thing we daven for Hashem b'chol tzarot tzavlot tzor, that you care about the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and if there's going to be shlemus in the Shekhinah, because Hashem created this world intentionally not complete. Because if the world was created complete, there will not be avodas Hashem, because Hashem, the Malachim don't have a body, they don't need to worship Hashem, like us.
They binah bechira.
No bechira, exactly. The Ramchal expands on this a lot in Kelach Pisei Chochma. He speaks a lot about this, how the whole ishtalshalut, how it happens.
So how can we think about Raphael? Do we think about Masad Shekhinah, do we think about Klal Yisrael? Do we look at Klal Yisrael? You're saying look at Klal Yisrael and then think and transfer it to the Shekhinah?
So the Shekhinah is basically Klalut Klal Israel, and the person is the Prat. When you daven on the Klalut, then automatically the Prat is going to heal as well. I'll give you an example. If you have a tree, and I'll tell you why I give the example of a tree, because the tree is the Anava. Eitz HaChaim is the Anava. Because Ma, Otiot Ma is the Yud Kei Vav Kei is Anava Ma Hashem Sholem Lecho, and Ma is the Eitz HaChaim, which is the Torah, it's the Eitz HaChaim. The Eitz HaChaim is basically the Torah. Each Yid, we know that each Yid is a letter from the Torah. So if you are saying that each Yid is a letter from the Torah, that means that Klal Yisrael itself is the Torah. Yeah? So if you see a leaf that is withering, what would you do? Would you try to fix the leaf first, or would you try to nourish the roots of the tree, giving it the right nourishment? The exact same thing, that if something bad happens, it doesn't happen in this world. First, it happens in the heavenly world before it comes to the. This is what it says in, I think, if I remember correctly, Maseret Ktorot Tav Kuf Yud. I don't know. Basically, אין אדם נוקף אצבעו עד שמכריזים עליו מלמעלה. And also, אין שר בעולם הזה נופל, like מצרים, אלא אם הצר שלמעלה נופל. So nothing, no cure and anything can happen in this world without first happening in the heavenly world. And here is another explanation from the Nefesh HaChaim. ואם בעניין תפילת היחיד על צערו, צריך שתהיה כמתו רק צורך גבוה לבד. כל שכן במטבע ברכות התפילה הגבוהה וסדורה מאנשי הכנסייה הקדושים, ודאי ראוי שלא לכוון בהם כלל לצורך עצמו הראינו בפשוטם. I know it's very hard to perceive it, but we need to have a bit more of an explanation to this, why it's like this. So to explain this, I'll give you the Zohar in Parashat Shemot Daf Yud Tet. There is a few forms of tefillah. Tefillah, she'ava, tzedakah. Tzedakah is the highest level. And the Zohar says, what is tzedakah? זה ותשאל to Hashem מקורות ליבו. And then later in the same daf, the Rashbi says that תפילה שבן אדם מתפלל עד שאין שפתיו מתנוננים, you are davening so much until your mouth cannot move anymore, תפילה כזה אין לה חוזר לריקם. And the reason why it happens is because when you do that, you are connected to midat ha'ayin, because midat ha'ayin is beyond this world. And when you are not moving your mouth because you daven so much, you are betachlis habitul. Just like when you use all your midot, the ahava, the chesed, and when you do that, Hashem anyway is with you. And Hashem is anyway going to give you everything you need if you are with Hashem. I've seen in one of the Sefer Chassidus, it says that if you ask a king, a peasant asking for a king that he needs bread, he's poor, then the king might give him once off panosa, yeah? But if you live in Heichal HaMelech, the king is going to be sure that all his servants are going to have everything that he needs. So when you are in front of the king, which is Hashem Yitbarach, and you don't think about yourself, you're just thinking about serving Klal Yisrael and Hashem Yitbarach, naturally you have everything you need. Just like when you nourish the tree, the leaves are going to heal anyways. So this is the Nefesh HaChaim who explains this, and it's all related to Anova. And I'll give you another form of Anova. Anova is not like a midah. Anova is like a way of life. For example, the Maggid Mitrisk in Parashas Vayikra says that Ikar Anava is when you don't speak Lashon Hara. The Kedushat Levi in Parashas Bereshit says that you cannot get to Yiras Shamayim Anova only when you know that everything that happens to you is Bechesed Hashem Yitbarach. All the good that you have is רק Bechesed Hashem Yitbarach. ועל פי דין כלל, and the Meor says, nobody would have panosa. And this is another shah to get to Anova. When somebody follows the 13 midot shel Rachamim, this is also another form of Anova. So Anova is not, you cannot say it's a one thing. Yirat Shamayim is not one thing, it is a way of life. And this is the point which I'm trying to pass on. And this is what, this is everything we said now is just to explain one word that the Meor Einayim says, בעניין יראת שמיים הוא הדבקות וייחוד גמור אמיתי, כל המידות אליו יתברך שהוא עניין יראה. Now, the Be'er Mayim Chaim says another similar thing, that it says before they had Yetziat Mitzrayim, first the Klal Yisrael, they davened for themselves for the Tzar Hashem Yitbarach, But then they felt a get bizayon that they worship Hashem Am HaNivchar, and this is how they look, Avadim Lepar B'Mitzrayim. So they felt like the pogem b'kvod HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and when they left, thinking about themselves and thought about kvod HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he says very clearly, ופירושו שמתחילה הלכו על עבודת הצער עצמם, וזה יענכו בני ישראל מן העבודה, אבל אחר כך שזעקו מקירות ליבם, what I said, like we said in the Zohar, that this is דרגת העין, which anywhere you see דרגת העין, this is equivalent to the ענווה. אז ותעל שבתם שנתקבל תפילתם. And that's what the Be'er Mayim Chaim says in Shara Tefillah. The Be'er Mayim Chaim says in Shara Tefillah. וזה נבוא לסדר תפילתנו, שבואנו לעמוד לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. צריכים אנחנו בתחילה לשום פנינו לגבי בלבנו המידה הטובה הנזכרה בפרק הלוז, להיות מן הנכנעים לפניו בגודל ההכנעה והשפלת נפשנו, ולהזכיר גודל החסד. When you think about all the chasodim that Hashem Yitbarach gives you, already automatically it's going to meor the simcha. And the Pri Haaretz says that אין מעלה ליהודי יותר מהשמחה, ואין ייחוד יותר גדול כשהמצווה נעשית בשמחה. ואז הוא מעורר את כל העולמות. And just for this sentence that the Pri Haaretz says, in the Ketub Aran, פרק ח"ד, there is a whole parasha where he brings the Zohar that a person who is able to do a mitzvah b'simcha is able to see the future and the past and able to connect to things which are beyond this world. עד למעלה מנף של רוחים ולשמוסים. You remember this ליקוטי מוהר"ן? שמתי שבן אדם עושה מצווה בשמחה הוא עולה למעלה מנף של רוחים ולשמוסים ברצו ושוב. This is a whole ליקוטי מוהר"ן just on this one. So that's what I said about the Pri Haaretz, that every few sentences in the Pri Haaretz can be like just what I said about the Pri Haaretz now, the sentence where he said אין ייחוד, אין מידה יותר גבוהה מהשמחה ואין מצווה, אין ייחוד יותר גבוה מהמצווה שנעשית בשמחה. Just on this, if you want בעיון יותר, if you have more time, I can show you how just on this sentence you got the whole ליקוטי מוהר"ן ח"ד ביותר בעיון. And now back to what we said about the tefillah. I said, ואין הטובות שאנו מבקשים להיות אלה וכאלה יוסיף לנו או להסיר ידו מאיתנו, הכל יהיה בדרך כדי להגדיל שמו הגדול, הגיבור והנורא. Because imagine now all Klal Yisrael is going to be b'shefa. Every Yid is going to have everything that he has, what he needs. And Chazal say that every Yid should be fortunate like Shlomo HaMelech and Moshe Rabbeinu, who had all the chokhmah in the world, all the ashirut in the world. Then if Klal Yisrael and every Yid would live like this, it'll be shevach l'Kodesh Baruch Hu. And ואין מעצור מלהשם להושיע את כלל ישראל, גם בעת הזה. Because there is no barriers, nobody can tell Hashem what to do. And this is what Hashem wants. But for this we have the Nisayon. And it's impossible to overcome the Nisayon by learning Musar itself. That's what the Pri Haaretz says in Parashas Nisol. Let's go to the Parashas Nisol. Pri Haaretz. Parashas Nisol. Just a second. It's this kind. He says, ולא דרך כלל אמרו, אלא אפילו אם ירבה לדעת הוכחות ומוסר החוכמה, ודעת איך להינצל מאותו תאווה, if a person wants to overcome chaos or any תאווה that he has, ולא ירבה במצוות אותו עבר מיוחד לאותו תאווה, גם כן מזיק יותר בחוכמתו. Because the stronger you become, the stronger the Yetzirah becomes together with you. If a person becomes wiser, more knowledgeable, he can use more knowledge to do good, but also more knowledge to do bad. So you don't have any Eitzah for this. Ella, when you are using your body and your midos only ובהשקט הערב משתמשו בתאוות ורשות כי אם במעשה המצוות אז יבא קרקע שחרו. When you bring Hashem יתברך into your מעשים and all your מעשים is בלתי לשם לבדוי, only then you'll be able to overcome all the תאוות and the midas harot. And I think I have to bring the Maharal מפראג, because the Maharal מפראג brings Yeravam ben Navat and other Gdolei Israel that were at that time. How can it be they learned so much Torah but still they fall? Because we say that the Torah is Samla Yetzirah, but we know that there are a lot of people who learn Torah but still are not able to overcome Kaas or Lashon Hara or any other Ta'avot. So he says that in Netivot Olam, Shara Anava, the Maharal Park says that when they learned the Torah, they did not, הם לא למדו את זה, I'll quote his word, הם לא למדו את זה לסלק את היצרה. If a person learns the Torah, לסלק את היצרה ולדבק בקודש ברוך הוא, only then, but he's not guaranteed, but only then he's going to be in the process of overcoming all the difficulties, all the ta'avot and all the ta'avot. And now I want to explain a bit about Kedushat Levi. I said I'll come back to it, I will go back to Kedushat Levi. There is three types of Yirat Shamayim. First is the Yirat HaOnesh, and Yirat HaOnesh, ordinary people have it. A person doesn't want to do bad because he doesn't want to be punished. That's the Yirat HaOnesh. Yirat Chet is also the Anova and Yirat Tator, which is basically you don't want to do the Avera because you love Hashem Yitbarach. Just like you don't want to harm somebody you love. Why? Because you love them, you don't want to harm them. This is the Yirat Chet. And Yirat HaRomiyot is impossible to come without contemplation. And he says that first contemplation, what I mean contemplation is using Chokhmah to get to the Keter, which is Yirat HaRomiyot. Yirat HaRomiyot is when you don't feel your Yeshut. That means you do everything naturally. Just like when a mother feeds her baby, she doesn't feel herself, she does everything naturally for the baby without any sachar. And it's a bit more than this, but this is just a small example that I can relate, just like when somebody breathes in and out. And Yirat HaRomiyot is when a person is bebitul legam HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he does every mitzvah in the Torah, and he only cares about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and ואהבת לרעך כמוך, אהבה ויראת השם יתברך, וכל המצוות האמורים בתורה. But it's impossible to get this yirah without chokhmah. And yirat chokhmah is when you contemplate on it. And I've seen in many sforim, I think even in the Sefer Nefesh HaChaim, that by contemplating there is two ways. One is you think about the greatness of Hashem. The second is that you think in terms of our bodies we are nothing. And the more you know about the Kodesh Baruch Hu, the more you know they are nothing. You know that you are nothing. I'll give you an example. When you live in a room, all you know is this room, like I told you before. You don't know a lot. You only know that this room exists. When you go out to a bigger building, you suddenly see more stuff. Then you know that you know less. You go out to the field, you know less. You go out to then you have a city, then you have the whole world, then you have all the stars. And the more you go out, the more knowledge you get about this world, the more you know that you know nothing. And the more shevach you see more greatness of Hashem. Because you have more knowledge and you see more. And all we know is just it's almost nothing compared to what Hashem created. Because Hashem created Olam HaAsiyah, Olam HaYetzirah. And just on this world we know nothing. And all this is Shevach Hashem. And since I'm talking about Shevach Hashem, and I spoke to you about Midot, I want to further expand on Midat HaTiferet. When Yosef HaTzadik had the Nisayon of Eshes Potifar, Chazal say that הוא ראה דמות דיוקנו של אביו, it's in מסכת סוטה, I think דף למ"ו עמוד ב', מסכת סוטה דף למ"ו עמוד ב', it says that ראה דיוקנו של אביו. What does it mean? Why when Yosef saw his father, it prevented him from the sin? So the inyan is every day she came to him with different clothes to להחטיא אותו. And by this, it's the same way that it's every day he comes to us in a different form to make us sin. One day he comes to us by a person humiliating us. The next day it might be that we are feeling unwell and he tries to make us angry. And sometimes he comes to us by speaking too much in Shabbos, which we're not supposed to talk too much in Shabbos. So every time the Yetzer Hara comes in a different form, and this is what they mean. Kol yom igia lo belevush acher. But this beauty, who created this beauty? Hashem created this beauty. And and Yaakov הרוחני זה מידת של הקדוש ברוך הוא, יעקב זה מידת העין. And when we say that he saw מידת יעקב, he saw the shoresh of who created this beauty, Hashem Yitbarach. And who am I supposed to love? Hashem Yitbarach who created the whole beauty of the whole world? Or this is אהבה נפולה. And this is what it means. And that's why יוסף הצדיק מחייב את הרשעים. במסכת יומא דף ל"ה, I think, if I remember correctly. יוסף הצדיק מחייב את הרשעים. Why? Because the רשעים, they only see this world. They're not seeing the shorish of who created the whole world and everything. So this is just to expand a bit more about the Midat HaTiferet. And in summary, Midat HaAnava is a way of life. And it appears in many forms. I want to mention what the Machsof HaLavan says in Parashas Vayishlach. The Machsof HaLavan says in Parashas Vayishlach, this is a very strong, very powerful from the Machsof HaLavan, which is the Bir Yaakov Rabbi Yaakov Abuchatzecha Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He says that Anava is Grimatya Samech Mem. Anava is Grimatya 131. Anava is also Grimatya 131. Ze keneged ze why?
So what's the first one?
Anava is Grimatya 131.
Any other words?
Samech Mem Aleph Lamed, you're not allowed to say.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It's also Grimatya Lamed. It's also Grimatya 131. Why is it? Why is the Grimatya? We know that there is no such a thing as coincidence in the world, and every letter, everything, every tziruf in the world has a reason. So, Anava means that you don't have any issue. You don't have. I'll have it soon. You don't have any issue. When you are not smart and when you are not rich, how can the Yetzirah convince you to sin? Imagine now the Yetzirah wants you to make you sin with your body. You say, I don't have a body. I'm Batul Hashem Yitbarach. I'm Batul HaMitzvot. Then the Yetzirah says, I cannot catch him. I cannot have any hold of him. But then Yaakov married two sisters, the Abir Yaakov says. And then when he marries the two sisters, he said, maybe now he fell. Maybe now it's his weakness and he fell. That's what Vayika Bekaf Yerech Yaakov. So he thought he's going to hold him. But Yaakov HaTzadik was B'tachlit HaBitul B'bchinat Ma, and the Yetzirah didn't have any way to hold him. And this is something very nice that I want to say. They say that En HaShechina Shora, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not with you, Ela Al Ashir Gibor Ve'Chacham. But not everybody. There was great tzaddikim. Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai was poor. So the Shekhinah is not with him because he's poor. So the Indian is like this. When a person is rich, smart, and strong, he has a bigger nisyon to fall for Gaiva. Moshe Rabbeinu had all these three midot. We are Ashir, Gibor, Vechacham. We are Gibor. They say he was big, he was strong. He killed all Melech Basham. He was the smartest man in the world. Some say that he's even smarter than Shlomo HaMelech because they say in Masechet Chagigah, I think, that what they say Shlomo HaMelech חכם מכל אדם לא נאמר על משה רבנו, רק על המלכים, שהוא יכול לדעת מחלוקת, but definitely not more than Moshe Rabbeinu, according to the sugya there. Because he himself says in Mishlei, the end of Mishlei, he says v'dat kedosh shimedo, that compared to the holiness of the Bar Noichim Miish, v'dat kedosh shimedo, there's a few mefarshim, some say Yaakov Avinu, and the kedoshim is the avod, that he didn't, with all his chokhmah, he didn't compare to them. That's what he said, Shlomo HaMelech. So the inyan shel Anava is that whenever you have an Nisayon, you should be bebitul, no matter how hard it is, and then the Yetzirah is not going to have any hold of you. But this thing you have to come. Shosha dvarim tzrichim chizuk b'chol yom, and if you don't contemplate on it, you won't be able to get there. Rabbi Yehuda Levi Sasso said, if you don't have 1 hour for yourself, b'nam she'eno sha'ah echad le'atzmo eno adam. Rabbi Nachman Breslev also said that a person has to have always 1 hour his boidedus. And again, his boidedus doesn't mean that you have to go to the forest. Again, it has many forms. When you think about one midah, or when you think about one mitzvah and how to connect to Hashem, this is also a form of it, boidedus. And tzaddikim all over the generations spoke about it, but it's not just Rabbi Nachman. Rav Shlomo Elkabetz in his Sefer, I think, Hayelev Ta'ovim, says, how does it go, the posuk with Lech Boi Netze Lech Hasodeh? when in Mishlei, not in Mishlei, Shir Hashirim, I forgot the pasuk by heart. Boy, when he says Neitze Asodeh,
Hatziela Sodeh.
Nesel Asodeh, in Shir Hashirim it says Nesel Asodeh.
Hatziela Sodeh.
I forgot the pasuk by heart. Anyways, Nesel Asodeh, he says that you go outside to the field and you do his boidedus. And also, Avraham Abulafi also said that you need to do a lot of his boidedus without people to disturb you. This is also another part of Avodas Hashem.
אין לך אדם שאין לו שעה.
And Osha, you have to have time for yourself. Otherwise, you want to have Yeshuv Adat. You know what? This is another very powerful thing I saw in the Sefer Chassidus. Take the most smartest person in the world, the holiest person in the world. Many times Hashem takes all his seichel away just for the nisayon. Because, for example, if somebody is going to tell you now to sin a certain sin, you won't do it because now you are begadlus seichel. But sometimes you are weak. We are weak. We are only humans. And Hashem intentionally does it so that we have sachar when we gather the nisayon. Yes. So what is the eitzah for this? The eitzah for this is that we should prepare before this. Betachpulot aseh milchama. And the milchama is that you are b'yishuv adat now. Then when you come to a certain situation, you know what to do. I spoke about how not to judge another person is another form of anava. I want to talk about David HaMelech and Batsheva, and when the Navi want to mochiach David HaMelech, I'm sure you know the story already. He came to him and he gave him the example of the kifsa. You remember the example of the kifsa? And when David, you remember the story with the David HaMelech and the kifsa? So when David HaMelech said, מה הדין של האיש הזה, שיש לו את כל הכבשים, והוא גזל את הכבש של האיש העני, הוא אמר, בר מיתה הוא חייב מיתה. ישר הנביא אמר לדוד המלך, אתה גזלת על עצמך. And this is something which I have to show you from the Noitze Chesed, from the Baal Hashem Tov, which is also related to הנבא. אם מדמה בנפשו איזה חיסרון בנפש ישראל, הן שמדמה בנפשו שאין ליבו לשמיים, או שאין לו מויכין מהירים כמותו, או שאין לו מדרגות כמותו, שיעלה בלבך לנגד עיניך עניין כזה, וכיוצא בזה בתקות גדול, תדע שלא במקרה נזדמן כזה. So whenever you judge another person, Hashem intentionally does it. He presents to you this person so that you'll be able to judge him. כי אלוה את השמיים ואת הארץ אני מלא, ולא יקל אז כבוד, ובהשגחה פרטית על כל תנועה, just like David HaMelech made the judgment on himself without knowing it. ואין שום דבר בא לנגד עיניו או איזה עניין שיהיה במקרה. אלא כל דבר קטן וגדול בא בהשגחה פרטית לצורך תיקון נפשו. אלא נזדמן זה לעורר נפשו בבדיקה וחיפוש וימצא שהוא עצמו יש לו את החיסרון. So when you judge another person that he has a certain sin that is not good, you are judging yourself. Just like once, I think Baal Shem Tov, they showed him that he saw another person Michalel Shabbos. He says, how can it be I did Michalel Shabbos? So then he realized, they showed him from Shamayim that הוא השתמש בתלמידי חכמים, ותלמידי חכמים זה שבת. So, although it's not directly, maybe you didn't make a Chilul Shabbos, you see another person Michalel Shabbos, maybe you didn't Michalel Shabbos, but you did something which is equivalent, like משתמש בתלמידי חכמים, or any other equivalent thing. So the same thing here, you should be very careful, because the damage you do is to yourself. But then, we see a lot of tzaddikim, they do curse other people, and they do judge other people. So the Noitze Chesed said that we are not supposed to go into the mind of tzaddikim because we don't understand them, because they have a kavanot from themselves, and that's why he says, ומתי שאתם רואים אותי מקלל אנשים מסוימים, אין זה הפשט, אלא יש לי בזה כוונות גדולות. That's what the Baal Noitze Chesed Avraham, which he was the Nitzotz of Arizal. He says on himself that he's the Nitzotz Arizal, which was the Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Yehuda Yechiel Safrin. Very, very powerful book.
What's the shot of Nitzotz? Is it like a part of it? Is it part of the neshama?
It's your neshama.
It's a part of the neshama went into him.
Yes. It's 100% the neshama.
And Harry Potter. call it Horcruxes. Horcrux.
No, that's completely different. Don't forget, you got nefesh, ruach, neshama.
Chaya in Yehuda.
Neshama is something completely different. It's not what you can comprehend. A person can only comprehend his neshama if he comes to the בדרגת העין. מתי שהבן אדם משתמש בכל המידות שלו בלתי לשם לבדוי, משם יפורדו כל פיה לאובן. And I saw in the bear, where was it that I saw this bear?
The Shama is already a Ruach Mamalala. It's the ability to speak.
It's above the Melochim.
No, I'm saying ability to speak. Ruach Mamalala. The ability to speak is Neshama. Nefesh is any life form, even a plant. Everything has a nefesh. Ruach is plant form, and Neshama is already ability to speak.
The truth is that everything is mishtalshel from the Yehuda to the Chaya to the Neshama to the Ruach and the Nefesh.
The Chayich and Neshama, Chayich, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. Your first three levels is the Nefesh. Nefesh is the lowest. Nefesh is a plant has a Nefesh.
Yeah.
A Ruach is already...
A plant also has a Malach. Every plant has a Malach as well.
As a Malach is a Nefesh. Isn't it? The Nefesh, which is just its life force. As Dominus.
This is a very complicated...
Ruach is already higher than that. Neshama is the Ruach Mamalada, is the ability to speak.
This topic is a bit complicated because the Baal HaTanya says that that Behema, even though it has
It's got a Ruach.
the shorish of Ba'olam HaAtzilut, the shorish of the Behema is a bit more, I think, a bit more than the Adam. That's why it's more powerful. And the Mashke, I forgot it by heart, but in the Kotei Torah,
It says it's got more power than because it's more direct from the Kodesh Baruch Hu.
something like that. Tzarich Chiyun. Since you mentioned the soul, the Baal HaTanya categorize the Adam by 5 ways: the Maaseh, the Dibur, the Machshova, the Midot, and the Sechel. Of course, the Sechel is not the brain that you think, and without the Midot, you won't have a form of thoughts. Just like a baby doesn't have any form of thoughts as you would perceive thoughts. He's much more pure, and all our avoider is to gain what we lost when we were babies. In the Shetinok b'mei uba, it says in Meseret Nida Daf Lamed, Meseret Nida, it says that שהתינוק לומד את כל התורה ולומדים אותו את כל התורה ורואה מסוף העולם עד סופו, וזה הדרגה של אדם הראשון. If I want to expand more, I can tell you that the סיפורי מעשיות, כל הצדיקים, מהשבעה באטלר, שהיה אחד שזכר לפני כן, ושמואל הקטן זה היה שזכר, רב לייזר זה שמואל הקטן שזכר את הברית, או שמואל הנביא שזכר את הברית, תצר הברית. מי שזכר שהוא היה בפרי של הבטן של אמא שלו, זה הדרגה של אדם הראשון שרואה מסוף העולם עד סופו. הצדיקים שהיו לפני כן כבר בדרגה מעל האדם הראשון. So you won't have... Let me show... You know in Sefer Kedushat Levi, most of the time it speaks about the Dargat Ha'ain. And I want to expand a bit more. Dargat Ha'ain. Ain doesn't mean nothingness. Nothingness is only because we don't understand it, we don't perceive it. You understand what I'm saying? I'll give you an example. When you have a seed and he wants to become a tree, he cannot become a tree. קודם כל, אני אגיד את הלשון של קדושת לוי, הוא לא יכול לצמוח אלא אם כן הוא נהיה עין באדמה, וכן זרע האדם באישה לא יכול להיות להיוולד בלתי שיגיע למידת העין. ובספר ישר דברי ימס, שאי אפשר בשום דבר בעולם שיבוא ממציאות זה למציאות אחר אם לא שיבוא לעין. I'll give you an example. Before you were born, you were nothing. And then you were born. But if you couldn't be born into this world if you were not first nothing. But what is this nothingness? This nothingness is the Gan Eden. The only reason we call it nothing is because just like you look at the sun and there's too much light, you get blind and you don't see it. The same thing, the Gan Eden is above what we can perceive with our 5 senses. it's what we can perceive with our Eser Sfirot. So before you could only be born in this world because you were not here in this world, you were Ein. The same thing with the Zera Shel Ha'etz. It can only become a tree before it germinates and becomes nothing. The same thing with us. אם בן אדם לא לומד תורה, כמו במידת העין, דבק בתורה, the Torah is not going to have the power to make him go. Just like what I said with the Avraham ben Navat, that he didn't learn, that the Maharam Prague says in Sefer Netivot Olam, he did not learn the Torah to לסלק the יצר הרע ולדבק במידת העין. And they say that מידת העין is only, learning the Torah is only if you learn it כדי לדבק במידת העין. So, שאי אפשר בשום דבר בעולם שיבוא מציאות זה למציאות אחר, אם לא שיבוא לעין, דהיינו מציאות דביני וביני, ואז הוא עין, ואין אדם יכול לעמוד עליו, כי הוא בא למדרגת עין כמקודם הבריאה, ואז נהיה בריאה חדשה כמו ביצה מלפרוח. And what does Rabbi Nachman Breslev says? Every day you should become reborn from new. And when he says this, he talks about מידת העין. I'll say this again because Rav Lezer came back. Rav Lezer, you know that Rabbeinu says that every day we should become newly reborn?
Yeah.
So how can you can only be reborn if you become Ein? Because before we come to this world, we are in the heavenly world, we are like בחינת עין. רק מתי שבן מגיע לבחינת עין, הוא יכול להיות נולד מחדש. So I wanted to emphasize this because you learn a lot of the Torah. Torah Vav. So I wanted to say this again because it came in. Yeah. Okay, since I mentioned Anava, I'll also talk about Anava Psula. And I'll finish with Anava Psula so that we don't get any mistake. I'll make it about 4 or 5 minutes. So Korach saw Moshe Rabbeinu and accused him of being Baal Gever. חז"ל אומרים מה ראה? ראה פרה אדומה. Para is מלשון פרה ורבה. He saw Moshe Rabbeinu strong, powerful, telling everybody what to do. And to him it looked like Gever. למה תתנסו על קהל הקודש? That's what he saw. But really it was really a reflection of himself. But this is absolutely not true. Because if you run to the shul, it's midat הגבורה. You're running to the shul to be on time in the shul. You work hard, you do all the mitzvahs. This is midat הגבורה. This is בחינת ויגבה לגבו בתרקי השם. And the Yehuda דברי אמס says, נמצא ענווה דקליפה להקטין את עצמו כדי להתרחק מהקודש ברוך הוא. וענווה דקדושה אדרבה כדי להתקרב את עצמו לשם יתברך ולבוא לשפלות באמס. So because he saw Moshe Rabbeinu growing up and becoming more, every day Moshe Rabbeinu became more than yesterday. And every day he did more mitzvahs. And you cannot do mitzvahs without the gvura. And you cannot be manig, כלל ישראל, without telling them, אתה תעשה ככה, ההלכה זה ככה. You have to have the power in your hand. And using the power in the right way is the תכלית הענווה. But Korach didn't understand this. He thought that because Moshe Rabbeinu is growing every day and becoming bigger and giving orders to Kahal Israel, לטובתם. Just like a mother telling the child what to do for his own good. Doesn't mean that the mother is arrogant. Or when us as fathers, parents, we don't tell the children to do control the children because we want Gav. It's nothing to do with Gav. We want it for the good of our children. The same thing, Korach saw this in Moshe Rabbeinu, but he did not understand it. Moshe Rabbeinu was like the mother of Klal Yisrael. שיר השירים, שלמה המלך said this, שני שדר כשני אופורים. This is אהרון ומשה, שהם היו מניקים את כל הטוב לכלל ישראל, לכן זה נמשל לשני אפורים. ולשני שדיים שמניקים את כלל ישראל, כל הטוב. And I'll just end with the Meor Einayim, which he says on Anava. When somebody comes and abuses you, humiliates you,